I object.
All right, Tom, take it away.
Great. Good morning, everybody. My portion today is very brief because you're here to figure out how this program may be beneficial to you. So first, I just want to say to everybody, number one, thank you for being here. I'm Tom Simplot, Director of the Department of Housing. Thrilled that we can present this conversation today jointly with Threshold and Home Inc. They came to us about a month ago, and we were super excited to be a part of this. This is information that we need to share with as many developers and operators as we can. And so thank you for being here. Not only is this something that will be good for new residents of yours, but it's also good for you, and that's important. And so that's kind of the plan that Threshold came up with. So to the team at Threshold, Daniel, great job. And this isn't the only one of these conversations we're going to have. We actually have at least 2 scheduled, and Daniel will go through that by the end of the session to tell you when that is scheduled. So I'm going to go ahead and go off camera. I'm going to be listening in. Again, thank you, Home Inc. Thank you, Threshold. In this tight market where we're just scrambling to find new units, your involvement is just so important. So thank you again, and I will go on mute.
Thank you, Tom. All right.
Well, thank you all for joining us. As Tom said, it's really important that you all are here, which is why we did the in-person. And last moment did the virtual for people who were actually out of town. So this morning is an encore performance for, should I be speaking over here?
No, you're good.
All right. Encore performance from one of the breakout sessions at the Housing Forum from this year. Jessica Raymond created quite a buzz with her business model and using supportive housing at her properties and really getting that integrated partnership with supportive service providers. And that really speaks to where we see this new service Threshold going. When I was over at UMOM, I was the director of housing for a while there, and it always was kind of a hot topic that providers aren't allowed to use their vouchers that they actually receive funding for on their own properties. And because of that, everything kind of becomes siloed, and we're not able to really prioritize what affordable housing we do have for the most vulnerable neighbors that we have. So this morning, we're going to really jump into the nuts and bolts of what Jessica does. And then you guys are hear a presentation as to how Threshold can help expedite your lease ups and centralize all the support services that you guys will receive. There's quite a bit of information, so just sit back, relax, enjoy the ride. And we will obviously be able to answer any questions at the end. Because a lot of these concepts are going to be kind of new, let's just hold questions to the end of that presenter's portion. So it's going to go Jessica, and then I'm going to present on Threshold, and then Mike Shore is going to close us down talking about Home Inc., which many of you are already familiar with. So without further ado, Jessica Raymond.
Whose microphone's on? I think you're good.
Okay, great, thanks. Well, thanks for that introduction, Daniel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jessica Raymond. I'm Executive Vice President of Atlantic Development and Investments. This is a company started by my dad, Mark Breen. That's him right there, and that's me. That's in 1986 at the St. Patrick's Day Parade, the year that changed our life when the tax code changed and the low-income housing tax credit was brought in. So I grew up in this industry. Although I came to be a developer, kind of a circuitous path. I studied sociology and social policy and wanted to, do good and change the world. And then I couldn't get a job, so I'm honest. Well, anyways, my dad presented me with an opportunity to work with him, and it's the best thing that ever happened because I get to work with someone I love who is amazing, one of my best friends, and now is my business partner. And this is my daughter, and we are hoping to carry on this business into a 3rd generation where her dream is that everybody, even bad guys, would have a home. So Atlantic Development is a for-profit development company. We're vertically integrated, so we have our own management company as well, Celtic Property Management. We also do our own construction. So when it comes to permanent supportive housing, we follow a partnership model where we reach out to good partners. We've partnered with the Greater Phoenix Urban League for over 25 years. And for the last several years, we've also partnered with Community Bridges, Inc., who provide behavioral health services around the state. We know that we are not, service providers. That's not what we do, but we can provide high quality, affordable housing, and we can provide a relationship with those service providers to integrate those silos that Daniel mentioned during his introduction. So in terms of our experience, we have experience with both project-based permanent supportive housing, where the subsidy is permanent at the project and services come and go based upon the need of the resident, and then also tenant-based supported housing. So this is really where I'm going to be focusing today and talking about the relationship with Threshold and how that's developed really since 2014 in the form of Home Inc. Just a little bit more about our approach. We tend to develop mixed income integrated permanent supportive housing projects. So some projects will be, 100% affordable, 100% permanent supportive housing. That tends not to be our model. What we do is we have a variety of income levels, at times including market rate units. And then we also have a variety of residents. So some are special needs residents who are permanent supportive housing units, and then others are just, your traditional affordable low income resident. We believe that this provides an opportunity for peer modeling and to kind of elevate beyond labels. We use categories and we use labels, they're often tied to our funding streams and help us to measure the success of our various programs. But for the individuals that are actually going through these experiences, we believe it's really important that they can move beyond, the label that's kind of imposed upon them and, regain that sense of identity as an individual who, has had some tough experiences, but is not defined by, the label of homeless or victim of domestic violence. They can transcend that. So our developments are 9% LIHTC properties. We don't really do a lot of 4% developments. They tend to align with the scoring criteria of the QAP, where they're transit-oriented designs and have a lot of amenities both on-site and in the adjacent area. And then they have energy efficient and family-friendly designs. One project that I'd like to focus on today that I think is like a good case study of how to implement the tenant-based vouchers is Avalon Villas. So I'll be going through that because I think that that's a really good example of what Elizabeth Gilbert calls like big magic, where you kind of like throw a ball out into the universe and then it kind of bounces back and you see what comes out of it. So before we get to Avalon Villas, I just want to talk a little bit more about our experience utilizing tenant-based vouchers. So our family of companies owns and manages around 3,800 units. 2,800 of those are affordable. As I mentioned, we've got, a number with project-based vouchers, Section 8 project-based, Section 202. But we also have over 750 households who receive some sort of subsidy assistance through a tenant-based voucher program. So this could be rapid rehousing, the emergency housing voucher program, HUD-VASH, or the various continuum of care programs. In particular, our Phoenix portfolio, 533 out of our 1,171 units receive some sort of tenant-based voucher subsidy assistance. So it's a pretty, it's almost half, which is pretty remarkable, and I'm very proud of that number. This didn't just happen. This was very much intentional, and it's the result of years of work. So I want to talk about, how this happened and, what we were able to achieve at Avalon Villas based on our experience. So back in 2014, my father and I made a conscious decision that we were going to work to try and bring in tenant-based vouchers and tenant-based voucher holders to our properties. And we reached out to Mike Shore, and we're working with Home Inc. And I think where's Mike? For the next couple of years, we were probably the largest landlord accepting Home Inc. vouchers. Is that fair to say? Okay. So we developed a really good relationship with Home Inc. and we continue to have an amazing relationship with them. And now with the launch of Threshold, it provides another, opportunity for private developers to really utilize tenant-based vouchers. So there's, a couple of reasons why you would want to do this. The first is that it creates additional revenue stream for your project. It's not the caveat there is that it's not revenue that your lender or your syndicator will typically use in their underwriting. And so you have to be very aware of that. And then you also need to make sure that you have a very good compliance department, because these various programs come with lots of rules and layering rules, and you have to be aware of how that works. But if you are able to navigate that, it provides a serious, financial benefit to your project. And I believe that if you're not working with Threshold, you're leaving money on the table. So I think that, it's something that's good for projects, and it also provides a social good. So what we were able to do is, by working with Threshold, working with Home Inc., and then working with our nonprofit service partners, we've been able to provide a pipeline essentially of voucher recipients to our properties. And we do this at key moments in the development process. So the example that I want to talk about is Avalon Villas. This is a 94 unit LIHTC property that was awarded tax credits in 2019. It was awarded tax credits in the general pool. It was not a permanent supportive housing project. But part of, my vision and the vision that my father and I have for our company is that we want to have on-site support services. We want to have communities where individuals can thrive and, feel safe and secure in their homes. So we built an on-site Head Start facility, which is run by the Greater Phoenix Urban League. And we have an on-site health navigator with Community Bridges. Now, those two things were not for sure when we set out to develop this. We literally had like a community service facility space, and then we worked with Head Start to get Head Start in there on site. And this is the first time that a private developer has done that. City of Phoenix has done it on their own properties. But I'm excited that we were able to do it just because it's something that we thought was a good. The on-site health navigator came about because I'd been working with Community Bridges at one of our other properties, City Place, where we have a project-based contract for the homeless and survivors of domestic violence and human trafficking. And we were talking with Community Bridges, and we were talking with the City of Phoenix, and we were saying, this program has been so successful. What we've been able to do is we've been able to work with UMOM's Family Housing Hub, and we've been able to link those families directly into this property and provide them with project-based rental assistance and on-site case management services that we paid for out of the cash flow of the property. So we were saying, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could replicate something like this at Avalon Villas? Now, at that time, there wasn't any available RFP for project-based vouchers. But what did get brought up was that there was this new program, the Emergency Housing Voucher Program. So we looked at that, and Community Bridges was working with the City of Phoenix on their Emergency Housing Voucher Program. And we said, okay, well, how can we, knowing that we have this property that's going to be leasing up in like 6 months, how can we use this opportunity to make sure that those residents who honestly were not finding rentals in the open market because people just were not accepting vouchers, how can we help them to get into our property? And so what we did was we actually changed our company's management policy, and we modified all of our tenant selection policies to prioritize voucher holders. So in terms of our tenant selection plan now, if a resident has a subsidy voucher, whether it's Section 8, an emergency housing voucher, rapid rehousing, they get first priority for vacant units. We also looked at the barriers to housing and how we could reduce those. And so we looked at our screening criteria, and we wrote in some language around mitigating circumstances, and around both eviction, past eviction, and also some criminal background criteria, looking at, what was the mitigating circumstances that occurred due to that. And we work with the case manager, who has to provide, evidence and a story and a plan showing that there's growth and there's a path forward. So by doing that, what we were able to achieve is that at lease up of Avalon, 47 of our 94 units were occupied by families that were on a various subsidy program. And this is all tenant-based. So we had 6 emergency housing voucher families, 3 rapid rehousing families, and then 38 families with just the regular tenant-based Section 8 vouchers. Because we were able to get such a concentration of emergency housing voucher families at the property, that's how Community Bridges was able to provide the on-site health navigator. They were saying, look, this is a program where we're providing support, and we've got residents that we're working with, and they're all kind of co-located right here. And we had office space, so we just provided it to them, and now they're able to have their on-site health navigator. So it's worked out very well for the residents. It's worked out well for us. Thank you. Again, we have had to, when you're working with your syndicator and working with your lender, I just want you to be aware that you do have to kind of explain this to them, because they will strip out all of the subsidy overhang. And, if you're working with an underwriter, they might say, why are you not at max rent? And you'll say, well, we are at max rent, but the tenant portion doesn't go up to the max. And so you have to kind of educate them and help them to understand what you've achieved at the property. But again, it provides a social good, and it also provides additional cash flow for the property. So in terms of some of the outcomes from this, we saw that the emergency housing voucher families had an average of 2.7 years of homelessness prior to moving into Avalon, or in the 2.7 years prior to moving into Avalon Villas. The emergency housing voucher participants had a combined experience of 17 shelter stays, 1 experience of rapid rehousing, and 3 outreach attempts. But now they're all securely housed at Avalon Villas, able to take advantage of those on-site support services, able to access on-site Head Start. And then the next thing that we're actually looking at now, following a visit from the city of Phoenix, is because we have the on-site Head Start, it looks like we might be able to do on-site father engagement through the Man Cave program. So it kind of like, it's cool because the good kind of builds upon good, and it's like sparking people's imaginations, and that's exciting for me. So in terms of, excuse me, I have a cold. In terms of lessons learned, I think from this project, the first is that, don't miss out on kind of key moments in the development process. That lease up period is so important. And if you're able to capitalize on that and be really intentional with your lease up, then you can make sure that you have a lot of voucher holders at your property. That not only increases your future cash flow, but also allows you an opportunity to partner with your community partners to provide social goods at your property. We also have, through this, an opportunity to address racial equity. So those emergency housing voucher residents, as you can see, a disproportionate number of them are Black and people of color. And so we can look at that now and say, okay, well, we see that that's happening. What can we do more, to help address this? What organizations can we work with to make sure that we're helping to create more equity and reduce those disparities? And then also constant communication. So I don't think that this would have happened if it hadn't been for that random meeting that we had at City Place, where we were all kind of standing around together, reflecting on what we had done there, talking about what we could do more. And we came up with this, spontaneous, organic idea together, and it's created a policy change within our company. So just make sure that you're continuing to talk with people, continuing to meet with people, even when you don't want to, because I was like 8.5 months pregnant at that meeting, and it was so hot, and I was so out of breath, but I'm glad that I did it because something really good came out of it. So just some closing thoughts. Threshold is here today. They're the lead here. Why partner with them? First of all, they make it easy. They know what they're doing. They will help you work through it. They've been working with my management company for a long time. Mike, Daniel, and I talked about, how can we increase the utilization of this program? And I said, you have to talk to owners. I said, you're doing a great job of reaching out to the management community, but you need to talk to owners. You need to show the owners the financial benefit of your program. You need to show the owners that you have mitigated risk by providing, damages, and how you work to provide your residents with case management services that come with their voucher. So Threshold knows what they're doing, and they will guide you through it. They're professionals. They make it easy. Secondly, there is a need. There's a lot of people out there who have vouchers who are not able to get housing. Private landlords just aren't accepting them. They do not have to. And we can, as affordable developers. It makes sense. It provides project stability in terms of your financial picture, and it's rewarding. Again, it provides a social good, and you don't want to leave that money on the table. So that's my closing remark. Thank you.
Can we do Q&A now, or?
Yeah.
So actually, yeah, I'll address that real quick. Actually, I'm just gonna put you on the spot for the QAP revision that's coming up, just so if you want to just drop a few sentences for that. And then really the purpose of this meeting, the reason that the time duration is set at like 50 hours or whatever like that, is because we want this to be a roundtable discussion as to, obviously Jessica presented a lot of action steps, and we want to talk about what that can look like in our community. So you want to go first, and then we can open it up? Thanks. Oh, sure. First. Go ahead.
Can I sit? Do I have to stand?
No, you can just stay right where you are.
I'll sit right here, but you all have seen we posted our final draft of the QAP, and one component that we added this time around speaks to what Jessica was talking about the need to find places for our voucher holders, and that folks just can't find a place. They have a voucher and it's a wonderful program, but they need a home.
Mhm.
So we are incentivizing folks who set aside 15% of their new units that will be awarded through that QAP process to tenant-based voucher holders. So definitely take a look if you're looking at our 9% round for 2023. It's a great addition to the QAP and really pairs well with what Jessica just presented. So thank you.
Also, I just want to acknowledge this is a pretty unique space for you all. If there are issues or just ongoing conversations on the periphery, this is a good opportunity to discuss kind of all of it at the same time. We'll get into Threshold, a lot of that stuff in a few minutes. But mainly when we're looking at those bonus points for those units, often we think of either housing choice vouchers or project-based vouchers specifically, and Threshold is now this unique central door for the entire HUD COC funded and access funded homeless system vouchers. So there's quite a variety of vouchers that you'll now have access to using just one resource, which is really cool. Okay, so I'm just going to open it up for questions, and then I also have some talking points just because I've never heard this presentation before, and I didn't set any of those slides up. I'm just like, wow, okay. So you want to start us off?
I had a question, which I'm sure Jessica can answer.
We'll see, Reed.
So I was making a list of 16 projects that I've been in. All urban.
Yeah.
And that's kind of public housing company. That's what we've done. Every time we have a project, whether it's a zoning case or we're looking at funds or we've got to explain tax credits, we get asked these Section 8 apartments.
Mm-hmm.
And it's as though the perception is sort of affordable housing is okay, maybe, but Section 8 is not okay, right?
Yeah.
There's this bright line, black and white difference between
Yeah.
the affordable housing resident. I had this happen just recently in Garfield, in the Garfield neighborhood. Project that's funded. Question came up again. Our company with Dunlap and McGee has typically not. We've watched the number of tenant-based vouchers, 10%, 20%. So that's how I've answered that question.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of a weak answer on my part, Jessica, but that's how I've answered.
Sure.
So how do you answer that question? Why is Section 8 bad and affordable housing might be okay?
Well, I think that it's a great question and it's a challenge. I get the same question.
Yeah.
And I think that, how I answer it is I say, I think that what you are asking about is this public housing, because I think that's what they're actually asking. And I
That
say
would be bad.
to them, yeah, because they're thinking, no, because they're thinking about giant public housing projects like in New York. And what I say is we're a private developer. This is a program that was created to incentivize private developers to develop high quality affordable housing. Now, what we do is we meet a community need. You need people who can afford housing in your community. Now, what we do as developers is we cannot and we do not discriminate against Section 8 voucher holders. And that's how I answer that question, because that is the truth. And I don't put a number on it because I don't know what the number is going to be. Now, if it's going to be a project-based project, I do answer and I say there will be project-based vouchers, which is a different circumstance. But in just a traditional affordable project, I just honestly talk about the benefits of affordable housing, and that, this is our community and they're people just like you, and everybody has different life circumstances that have, led them to need affordable housing, and that there are various programs. And I explain the difference between public housing, project-based Section 8, and tenant-based vouchers. I explain that to them. And then they seem to, people seem to get comfortable once they understand that difference. I don't know why. I think that it's just fear of the unknown in the beginning.
Did you talk about income levels? Sometimes I talk
I
about
do.
income levels.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's helpful.
Yeah, I do. I usually show income levels, and I usually show the various income levels and then what the rent would be. Yeah.
Showing pictures of the completed projects you've done is always very helpful.
I show
Of all
completed
the
pictures.
interiors
Yep.
and everything like that.
Yeah.
That
Yeah. I also
So
find
Randy,
I'd
love
go
to
ahead.
expand what we're doing. Mike, we've talked about this for a
Yeah.
long time, but I haven't expanded. And part of this is the fear factor on my part, especially when we have a zoning case
Mhm.
that we're trying to work on. So it would be great to have people help be advocates for that. I know ADOH has been a good advocate.
Yeah.
City of Phoenix folks have been good advocates in Tucson. It's interesting. I've hit this huge perception difference between affordable housing and Section 8.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I mean, to call a spade, I think that part of that is veiled racism, Reed. I think that people I think
Those people are going to live here?
yeah, and I think that, you have to we have a responsibility to push back on that as much as we can. I think that it's hard to call people out on that because they don't even acknowledge it. But another thing that's helpful is we tend to integrate at least a small component of market rate units, whether it's 10% or that seems to give people a level of comfort that they know that there'll be market rate units in there as well. And then I talk about the benefits of the Section 8 program and the benefits of the LIHTC program, and that this is not slum housing. This is highly regulated. We undergo audits for every layer of financing involved, and there are lots of eyes on us making sure that we comply for the long term and that we will be here for 30 years. Typically, those neighborhood residents won't be there for 30 years.
So it sounds like I need to invite you to my next public hearing. Right?
I'll get together a consulting contract.
I would say, interestingly, my neighborhood Facebook group, I learned that there's a development team plan near Fulton Ranch, pretty opulent area in southeast Chandler, by Dominion, on a county island, so it's Maricopa County, right? And so city council in Chandler isn't recommending it, but we're kind of driving through, and that's exactly what the residents said. It's a low-income housing project with some seniors, but the word that got thrown around was it's going to be Section 8, right? And so I think there's a need to continue to explain what Section 8 is. And I would say the Center on Budget Policy and Priorities, I think, has some really great stats about who actually gets Section 8 vouchers, right? Disabled, elderly. So I think we can do a better job of explaining who these folks are.
It's a better term than Section 8. It's not how you measure.
Housing choice voucher. Housing name, it has been since '98. Just hasn't caught on. So, yeah, you can disguise it that way. But I think like I have an opportunity in Chandler to advocate on behalf of that project as a resident. I think we need to do a better job of finding the advocates and projects are going and helpful to partners.
And Reed, to add to that, I've been in this space now almost 20 years, and people will come up to me and they're like, oh, so like Section 8, when I start the work that I do. So it's just something that
They hold their nose.
yeah, and I'm like, no, it's much more than that, but it's just that has become the vernacular that everyone's comfortable with. When you say you're providing low-income housing, it's just like automatically that term comes up. So I think we're all in that battle with you, trying to educate and explain and just make people understand that. But I think that private component, the private development piece of it is so critical.
Yeah.
When you throw that out there and the resources that come with the private developer, that's,
Right.
the game changer in people's mind, right? So.
It's not public housing.
No,
Right.
I think that that's such a great point, is when you're saying it's not public housing, because they're thinking Cabrini Green.
Yes,
Yeah,
that
yes,
type of stuff.
yes.
And when you say it's not the public housing, this is like a private development, it's affordable housing.
Yep.
But yes, when you're saying Section 8 housing, exactly right, they're thinking of Greens.
Yes.
And that's not what this is, that's why
No.
I think pictures actually help.
100%.
Take pictures and show everyone, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
I've even
Randy,
taken
so-
residents on tours of our other projects, and they're like, oh, and then they become our advocate in the neighborhood.
Yes,
I
yeah.
had a project in Tucson, 7 counties, years ago. Affordable housing in a historic neighborhood, and affordable housing was okay, Section 8 was not. And talk, that
Yeah, I think it's education. Honestly, I mean, so much in life, it's just communication and education, and it's exhausting and tedious, but
One quick suggestion, when we were working on the messaging for Threshold, found that similar to Section 8 is a great way to start a sentence for almost any context. Because then it obviously differentiates us, and we don't have to get into like, what is Section 8, what is a Section 8? But then we can start talking about what kind of affordable housing development.
I was gonna say, Rita, I just say it's not dishonorable discharge. No, it's Section 8 used to be.
Is that right?
Yeah, the Section 8 was.
Oh.
Yes, yes.
I think that went over all our heads.
Forgot that.
Well, that was kind of my challenge to my management company, because their first thing was, you can't do that. That violates fair housing. But if you are consistent in your criteria across the property, I've been assured it's okay. Yeah, and I actually, so in Colorado, I actually worked, this kind of came about because in Colorado, we developed a project, and there in Colorado, we got points at that time for prioritizing the Section 8 voucher holders. And we had an agreement with the local housing authority that we would provide priority for those voucher holders. So I provided a copy of that agreement to the city of Phoenix, and they were like, well, we're not going to sign this agreement with you, but you're a private owner. You can create whatever selection policy you want. It's the same as when, the QAP calls for, prioritizing households with children or any other type of thing. You create a priority and you put it in your tenant selection plan, and you're consistent.
At that, Mark Sinman, the zone logger, state that he believes are affirmatively furthering your
Yes.
commitment to fair housing by prioritizing
Correct.
vouchers because they who are protected class. The fact that they have a voucher in itself is not a protected, so you're not preference.
So for all of our properties. System across the board.
I think that as long as you're consistent within a property, because each property has its own tenant selection plan, but we've just made the decision to do it company-wide. The key is consistency. Like, you can't have, like, if you're looking at mitigating circumstances, you can't look at, You can't say, well, this person is okay, but this person isn't if the circumstances are the same. You have to make sure that you're being consistent in your approach and that you're documenting that consistency.
Another just quick note, sorry.
No, go ahead.
On the last meeting with Jason, it would be helpful, I think, to have somebody like Jay Young on Harborough, right, with the Southwest Fair Housing Council.
Yeah.
To support the sector by affirming that this is the key, right? Because that's
Yeah.
the worry. Are we going to sue, right? So I think you have a fair housing. So we've requested that. That's what we're not reluctant, just not wanted. Might help to have.
Yeah, I think so.
A larger asset. So something to think about.
One thing I wanted to raise too is, you know, we definitely want to advocate that we all utilize this in some way, but you have to also remember your underwriting.
Mm-hmm.
And Jessica touched on it a little bit, and we actually did this session at the forum.
Yeah.
You know, this is an awesome presentation. And Community Bridges was part of that session as well. But when you're looking at your underwriting, it's very critical because your equity investor is going to look at tenant-based vouchers different than project-based vouchers. So I just want to put that out there. It's not just like, okay, cool, we're going to do this. You've got to make sure your underwriting is going to support your project with or without the voucher. So can you talk about that a little bit? And your experience with your equity providers when they're looking at your tenant-based vouchers?
Yep, absolutely. So so all of our underwriting does not include the tenant-based income. It's the same as like what we provide to ADOH. It doesn't provide any tenant-based income as well. Again, when they go through and are doing their, you know, we provide them with rent rolls and we provide them with, you know, information about operations of the property. They have lots of questions because they're like, well, so one question is again and again, like, well, I'm not quite getting to max rent. And it's like, no, you are getting there. It's just that the tenant portion doesn't go to the max because the tenant portion is so small. The second question that they'll often have is, why are these rents different? So for example, like City of Phoenix, a Section 8 rent that I got in April might be different from what I got in June because their rent comp study has changed in the interim. And so explaining that to an investor, because they'll say, well, this is a Section 8 voucher from the city. Why is it a different rent from this Section 8 voucher at the city? And you have to explain that timing makes a difference and that basically each voucher is looked at uniquely by the city and negotiated on an individual basis. But yeah, basically put your deal together knowing that your investor and your lender won't take this into account in their underwriting. Another challenge, and I want to go back to the slide on where we have these vouchers. So we've got 533 of these vouchers in our Phoenix portfolio alone. And so rural deals are going to have a hard time with this. And so that's one, you know, thing that I would like to ask the department for help with is, you know, getting more vouchers in rural communities. And also, since investors and lenders won't underwrite with the Section 8 or voucher overhang, you know, really leaning on municipalities to project-based more of their housing choice vouchers. Because Mike is clapping. Because we can create permanent supportive housing doing that. They have vouchers that are not being placed, and it makes all the sense in the world to, you know, put out more RFPs so that we can create more permanent supportive housing. So if the department could work with local municipalities and encourage them to do that, that would be very helpful.
Here's some other thoughts. I do have a list of questions that I'm just maybe personally interested in. So rolling out the screening criteria, if I can go back to that a little bit, and that was a question I came up to Steve earlier. What were some of the logistical problems of rolling out that prioritizing TBRA clients or tenant-based rental assistance clients across your portfolio? How did you decide which properties to do that at?
We just did it at all the affordable properties.
And what were some issues that you ran into?
We haven't really had any issues, I guess. We've been doing it for such a long time, kind of on an ad hoc basis. Like, we've made such an effort to work with Homing to get, residents with vouchers in. It was just really kind of memorializing what we'd been doing in practice and putting it into policy. So I guess kind of working backwards.
When you modify your tenant selection plan,
Yeah.
you have to get approval and or notify the residents or the existing waitlist applicants if you have one, that this is the new priority.
I don't know. I'd have to ask my management company that question.
Like
Yeah.
generally when there's a wait list, right, it's just first come, first served, and you're in line.
Yeah.
They're gonna change it up on you. Housing authorities
Mhm.
often will send out those folks saying, we've adopted some new local preferences, and so this is how it's, I just wonder if there's any similarities there that Department knows about, on that compliance side. Steve's question, like, how do you go about doing this? Maybe I'll follow.
I'd have to ask my management company president.
Yeah.
I don't get into that level of detail.
But it used to be that there weren't a lot of waiting lists.
No,
Properties, right? And suddenly now you guys have them.
Right.
So thinking about
It
that.
just seems like tenant.
Right.
Housing.
I mean, if you have federal funding,
You can't discriminate anyways.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
have to provide that, as evidence to us,
Mhm.
and that, when we're doing our subsidy layering review and whatnot, we're looking at the, affirmative fair housing marketing, tenant selection plan, we're looking at all those documents so that when we're audited, that's gonna be in the file, that you provided that to us and it has the language that needs to be there. So there is that oversight, especially with federal dollars. HUD is going to look for that. And they will, they'll have a finding if that's not, what. Now, to get them to say what it exactly needs to be, good luck with that. But for sure, it's definitely, something that they're gonna monitor us for.
Some other, go ahead.
So I have a question about,
Sure.
so you say that you prioritize TBRA voucher holders. Can you just a bit more granular into like what that means? Like, is it additional points that are built into prioritization that are factored alongside others? Is it just sort of an elevator to the top?
Elevator to the top, more or less. Yeah.
But it's all types, right? So like
Yeah.
you said, rapid, PhDs, HUD,
Right.
it's.
Yep. Sure.
I know there's gonna be, just some general hesitation as to like, taking on deeper clients or clients that are being supported with vouchers, obviously less so in this group, but still, can you just anecdotally talk about, some experiences have been since you've been prioritizing to clients, just in general, how are your communities, how's the process been, how have been?
Well, I think it's positive. I mean, there's been good coming out of it. So the more kind of concentration that you get, the more you can work with your community partners to provide those services on location, which is great. We had internal resistance in my management company, particularly for the rapid rehousing vouchers, just because it seemed like, I don't know, it seemed like in some ways those vouchers are like setting people up to fail. Like the support net is getting pulled away too soon from them. So I had to push back on that, and I won. But I mean, no, I'm just saying, like, as a community, like those vouchers need to get looked at, in all honesty.
You see people failing in your communities with them right now?
We have right now, not so much, because like where we've been able to like link in the community partners, they're like transitioning to other programs. But in the past we have, like, I would say probably between like 2014 and 2018, that was happening a lot. And it was just like really disheartening.
Would it help just for this group to understand? Does everybody know the difference between rapid rehousing and a supportive housing voucher? I see your face. Okay, good. At least one person. Rapid rehousing is intended to be targeted to families who have more moderate needs with minimal subsidy in case management will transition into that same lease, taking on and getting back on their feet. That being said, because we have such a large lot of people with rapid housing interventions, that perhaps that's not the intervention you need for every voucher. So the system, the homeless services system, in terms of moving people along into the right interventions and identifying them, not pulling the subsidy or case management soon. We're all still learning, but from 14 to 18, that intervention was still relatively new, and we were figuring it out, and I would agree, it wasn't great. It's better.
Yeah, it
The
is.
length of time that people are receiving in both subsidy and case management are extending. So it's getting better, but I agree, it still needs to continue to be looked at.
Our experience, our experience with that.
Mm-hmm.
Education is where you're very usually stuff. Waving for us down the road. Again, getting back to my concerns, it just seems like take you down that path as long as they can, then they threaten legal action. They know because you're mentioned in the press, so that's why our hesitation is always these guys. It's just always that concern of the back.
When Daniel talks about threshold features that we use to try to mitigate some risk associated with that.
But I mean, my management company was concerned with the same thing. When I brought this up to them, that was their initial response is, you can't do that. That violates fair housing. And I said, show me. Show me where. Like, prove it to me. And they went back and they consulted with our attorneys and they couldn't. So.
What's funny is it's okay to say no vouchers, but it's not okay to say we're prioritizing vouchers.
Well, it's not okay to
It
say
is,
no vouchers
right,
at our
right.
properties.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Though. It's like, it's actually like,
Yeah.
we typically think of when we're engaging the general market as threshold. It's okay to say as an ownership group, no vouchers on our properties. But right when you flip it, you prioritize vouchers, then it's like a,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Steve, I was looking at it too in a tax credit project. You have so many parties with legal counsel in your deal, like not just you and not just your management company, but your equity partner, your lender. If it's a bond deal, you've got 10,000 attorneys on your that they're looking at all of that because they're selling it into a fund, and upper tier investors even looking at it. I mean, there's so many layers that I think that you wouldn't have been able to get Avalon Villas done if there was a hesitation about a violation of fair housing.
Yeah.
I know it's not easy with the tenants, right? But yeah.
I'm sure it's going to be easier to try from the front and establish our existing projects.
Yeah.
Justify.
And then
Mm.
the elevator to the top, yeah.
And they're going to be going to the press, and Jerry's going to call somebody. Saying this before you.
Yeah, I understand.
It seems like there's a subtle point there too, that's very little, that is like, in any of this prioritizing, anything but like on the homeless side where we're more often always about coordinated entry, and like where we try to solve a shortage through prioritization, or and somehow then the conversation gets focused on the prioritization and not on the shortage.
Right.
Right, and so to that point, right, it seems like expanding development across the board is absolutely necessary piece, because people shouldn't be on this road.
Correct.
The reality of our environment. So I think we lose sight of that a lot. Focus on how we prioritize and forget the eye stays in this.
I've also seen every 10th, every president on, so you're not taking everybody that had voucher and put them at the top, but gradually work. So.
And the other part of that is, we talk about vouchers in general, like you said, we're concerned about like big general, like New York style projects. But as landlords start to, or as owners and operators start to like push out vouchers, we actually end up centralizing voucher holders, fewer and fewer projects, like development properties. So it ends up like the more that we can spread it out, voucher holders and funding sources and diversify like that, the stronger the community is actually in general. And that's also like a general talking point in combating NIMBYism, right? And we saw that at 19 West. I live right next to 19 West, and I actually had this conversation with somebody in my family, and it was like, well, we don't want affordable housing over here. We want like what UMOM built over there. I'm like, that is literally affordable. That's what I'm talking about. And it's like, oh wow, actually, yeah, we want a lot of that in our neighborhood.
That actually got threatened my life twice.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, that's why I was looking at you.
Oh my God, what happened?
They told me to bring my flak jacket to the next meeting. This was in 2017, 2018, we were like rezoning over there. I mean, this lady like cornered me downstairs, and this was in the CPH building. They didn't have metal detectors because it was a planning commission meeting. It wasn't the full meeting. They had like guns on their hips, and they were like downstairs, like going to the bathroom, and I was like, all right, and like, yeah, bring your flak jacket to the next meeting. I'm like,
Oh God.
and like they were wearing weapons. I'm like, all right, this is awesome.
We built one in the same area.
Yeah, right across
Yes,
the street.
northern
Yeah.
Wall Street. Again, the city, because of the neighborhood, we did not support it. Case in Texas with the Supreme Court.
Mhm.
ruled discriminate. Actually, state one. So that was fun. And neighborhood, it's not,
Yeah.
not easy.
Especially since
we
we
had
had
the back of the state.
I'm sure we know some of the same characters from that neighborhood.
No. Any questions, Brian? Okay. Well, I think we're gonna find a good place to transition, if that's okay.
Yep,
Okay,
please.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Full disclosure, I'm gonna really struggle sitting down because I'm Italian. So it's like, I have to like stand up and walk around and like do all the things with my hands. Well, thank you, Jessica, very much for your willingness just to do this again and share some of your secret sauce, I guess, is how it feels. It's like, oh, we know how to get it done now. And that's exactly the point of this is obviously we're gonna talk a little bit about this new service that launched a year ago here in our community, but also problem solving together is like the only way that we're gonna keep pushing forward on this. So appreciate everybody's honesty and questions. Well, so it's no surprise, everybody, we all know this. The shortage that Jason was referring to keeps us fighting for the limited units that we do have. And it's no surprise here for this group that things got way worse during COVID. We had the eviction moratorium, and then we had rental assistance, and we've had like all these different pieces that all the stakeholders in our industry and sector everybody's had gripes about something, right? As we're all just trying to get done our portion of solving this problem. Well, Threshold is a new network of resources and support for owners, developers, and operators that didn't exist in our community until July of 2021, I think. That's what COVID did to my brain. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm like, it's 2018 right now, right? No. Okay. Moving forward. But that's because there was no real table for all stakeholders to be engaged. And so owners, operators, developers have all existed by themselves until there was an issue. And then we're going to bring you in to talk to you about the issue that we have, right? Well, Threshold has realized that, and Home Inc. and we're funded completely through Maricopa County, has realized that, well, you all are a big part of solving this problem. You know, when you look at typically sides that are against each other in all kinds of venues, we still have the exact same goal, which is we need more and more affordable housing. The AMA, their top legislative agenda last year in their report was to continue to advocate for more affordable housing. It's good for everybody. It's good for our neighbors. It's good for our literal families, right? It's good for everybody. So as we've seen that the number of people in need of housing continues to outpace development, we're bringing everybody to the table. And so this is not just an informative session. We really want to invite you to participate in the conversation and in the solutions. What's really unique about today's conversation for me is that usually I'm presenting threshold as this thing that will help support you, right? We have these new incentives and damage claims. We have all kinds of things to address the concerns that owners and operators typically have. But one thing that we don't really hear is that where do you find all these voucher holders, right? Is it usually there's not a problem finding the Section 8 vouchers, the housing choice vouchers, and developing that wait list. But if you have ADA units that you've developed, where do I find people who need ADA units so I don't have to reduce the rent and can charge full rent? Well, Threshold is now the central door for all of these tenant-based rental assistance vouchers that receive any sort of HUD COC funding or access funding as well. And Home Inc., which Mike's going to talk about in a second, which many of you are familiar with, you also know that last year received the AHP contract for the whole state, and Threshold is now the brand for Maricopa County, and yet we're taking all of the best practices that we're learning and we're going statewide. So you can really look at this not just as Maricopa County, but this is the central door now for your whole portfolio to access voucher holders. And what do I mean by all voucher holders? We just talked about them a little bit: rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and then also the veteran equivalents of those. SSVF is similar to rapid for those who don't know. HUD-VASH is a lot more similar to PSH than it isn't. And another way to think about some of these vouchers, especially when talking to people who have no idea what these are and is this Section 8 or not, I like to think of it's based on need, right? And so you have people who just need that financial assistance, and that's going to mainly be the housing choice voucher, right? Then you have people who may need a little bit more support getting on their feet, connecting to employment, connecting to getting their kids enrolled in school, connecting to services. That's going to be the rapid rehousing, that kind of soft touch. And then people who will still need assistance even if we pay their full rent, that's going to be permanent supportive housing, where the whole community is coming together to really integrate services for this person in their home. But Threshold now is the central door for all of those vouchers. You don't have to know the difference between any of them. We've got all of them in one place. But we also become the central door for all the special populations, and this is what's really key for the QAP, right? We've got people with disabilities. A lot of them are receiving our PSH vouchers. Well, other way around. Many people receiving our PSH vouchers have physical or long-term disabilities. They are veterans. They're experiencing homelessness. We have many of these like boutique little programs specifically for victims of domestic violence. And then also the coordinated effort to house youth coming out of foster care. All of those, I mean, you guys know this. I literally just copy and pasted that from the QAP because that's who we serve, right? So all those populations have different kinds of vouchers outside of just the housing choice voucher. We also service all providers. And this is the reason that I came over from UMOM to help start Threshold at Home Inc. was we realized there needs to be a central door to support owners and operators, but then also there needs to be a central door for all providers, regardless of how large they are or how much funding they have or what that looks like. Instead of everybody kind of having their own pocket relationships, let's open the whole thing up, make sure that everybody is fully taken care of and that everybody has access to the vacant units that they should. And so we have one consistent, simple process I'll get into in a second, regardless of who the provider is. Also, who is the provider for this one tenant? It doesn't matter, just call us. We'll navigate that whole thing. It's a little complex, so let us help you. We're also the single phone number to get a hold of not only case management, but also any other resource that you may need, technical, financial resources. Let's work on some of this together. We have our team, which is very different than the team I had when I was at UMOM, which was social workers. Now is real estate professionals, right? People with realtor certifications, tons of property management experience. Our owner support team, we have 2 individuals on there that have had over 20 years experience in the property management field. So these are experts who want to also come on the other side and help start solving these problems. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's probably the majority of the permanent supportive housing vouchers that we serve. We do the housing side of that whole. Sorry, somebody's phone or something's on. We do the housing side of that whole tenancy. So there are tons of clinics involved, and we help them navigate our system, and we do all the rent reasonableness and the lease literacy and the RAFT and the HAP contract and all of that for those people being supported by clinics. Yep. Good question. And I'll tell you, we're the one-stop shop for that. And even for us, it's kind of difficult to keep track of case manager turnover or clinic changes and all these things. So good question. So, and this is the last, this last point is also something that I was alluding to when I was singling out Brandy earlier, where it's, if UMOM has a development, but then UMOM also has rapid rehousing vouchers or SSVF vouchers, we can't place them at a UMOM property, but we can at a Catholic Charities property or an American Connections property. And so we can start to prioritize the limited availability that we do have in our community for people who are already going to have all that other assistance too. And right now, I think we're averaging about 700 people with vouchers looking for a home at any moment. And so there's a lot of need. We're not talking about just a couple dozen people here. We're also the central door to support all owners and operators, and developers often get left out of that conversation a little bit, and that's why we're here today, because there's a lot of support that we can provide developers, but also there's many ways that these vouchers are actually assets for future owners. We also have a lot of the solutions that we've all talked about throughout the years. We literally just took all of your input, and then we came up with apparently owners and operators want these things. Let's just start doing some of these things. That's where we get this central door concept and this central hotline. Anything that's confusing, just give us a call. We'll take care of it. But then also we're the central table for all stakeholders to be engaged in the solution. And this is proof. We get this feedback regularly. You guys asked us, and then what we wanted as owners and operators, then you guys created threshold, and now you keep asking us what we need. We want you to be part of the solution, and that means you have to give us active feedback as well. So we asked in 2020, UMOM and Home Inc. together did this survey where we asked anybody who would respond, and 103 owners and operators filled out this survey saying, the question was pretty much, what will it take to get you to work with rapid rehousing? And it was specific to rapid rehousing, which at the time, and still is, was experiencing some difficulty with what happens when somebody moves out? What happens if they're not successful? So people were starting to turn away rapid rehousing specifically. 90 out of the 103 said they would participate if there was some sort of protection against unpaid rent and vacancy loss. And at the time, obviously, there was ALIP through ADOH. And part of it was that we hadn't been telling people about this resource enough, or how easy it was to access the funds. And then also, making sure that we're holding up our end of the deal of supporting somebody through the application. But then 79% also said, hey, there's a lot of other parts that come with housing these tenants. It'd be nice if you could help us mitigate some of those extra costs too, with a no strings attached cash bonus on the front end. This is actually a best practice that HUD has been rolling out across the country now. And it's because, we could nickel and dime all the different pieces, the different costs of being an owner and operator, but we would rather just give you a cash payment on the front end to work with our programs, at least to try it out. And then also, we want to get some value out of that money too, right? So helping reduce some of the screening criteria, that also will qualify a lease for an incentive. And then we also have lowering the rent and so on. So we took this information. We didn't have a name for it. We couldn't even really agree on what to call this concept. Landlord liaison program is apparently what people call it around the nation. But what we did is we put all of it together. We started pitching it to funders. Maricopa County said, it doesn't make sense for you to try to do like City of Phoenix and City of Tempe and City of Scotts and so on, so on, so on. Let's just fund it for the whole COC. So what's in it for all of you? We've got this new service that offers incentives for all leases, the initial lease, excuse me, all initial leases. I do want to clarify on that. So every time you're moving in a new tenant, you qualify for a cash incentive on the front end that will be paid at the time of move-in, and that's 1.5 times the monthly rent. So it scales based on unit size and quality of housing and all of this stuff, which is awesome. Assurance that rental assistance is paid on time and in full. Again, instead of having a lot of providers with different processes, we're going to centralize and simplify. A dedicated 6-person owner support team and a 24-hour hotline. If you call it right now, nobody's going to answer because it's on silent. It's in my bag. So if you ever want to talk to me, that's, just call the number. And then we also have a closed internet listing service. So we only allow access for tenants with vouchers. Even people in that same provider don't have vouchers. They don't have access to this. And then owners and operators who are offering their vacancies as well. Super simple to use. And then we have risk mitigation funds. So again, this is that 90 owners and operators said, can you just help cover some of the damages? We're afraid of the damages, or we have seen the damages. Would you be able to help us cover that? Well, we took ALIP and then we kind of put it on steroids. So we're offering 3 times the monthly rent in damage claims, and then an additional 1 month's rent for vacancy loss. And now ABC is mirroring the exact same thing statewide for the housing plan as well. So it's the exact same lineup, which is awesome. Consistency, simplification, meeting the needs. So for incentives, a lease can qualify for an incentive one of 3 ways. If this is a new owner-operator partner who's never worked with the COC or with the Access Housing Plan, for the first 6 months, any lease that you sign, you'll get that bonus. 1.5 times the monthly rent, cash, paid at move-in. If you're an existing partner, but you're willing to reduce screening criteria from your normal screening criteria, and we talked about how to do that earlier, based on either a lack of income, previous evictions, or background history, that'll qualify for an incentive. Obviously, our entire homeless model is based around housing first, which is, it's really hard to get clean and get a job and do all the things you're supposed to do on the streets. Let's get people stably housed. Let's start paying their rent and helping them experience more of a stable life. And that means that they probably won't have jobs. They might be on the streets for a recent eviction or criminal history, et cetera. So we want to compensate you for making that change. And then also, if you're willing to reduce rent down to what our payment standards are set at, HUD dictates that mostly. And so, yeah, this year, I'm sure you all have seen that our FMRs have substantially increased, I think almost 35% here in Maricopa County. So we're a lot more competitive with the market, but still, if it is one of those A-class properties, or if it's a single family home or something, you want to come down, we'll be able to incentivize that. Risk mitigation funds, this is mainly split into 2 pieces. Damage claims, those are all the physical damages you think of, but it also includes arrears, cleaning fees, legal fees, any of those move out costs. We will pay up to 3 times the monthly rent. And then an additional month in vacancy loss to accommodate or to compensate for the time it takes to turn the unit and even to release that same unit. What we want to do is on the front end of a tenancy, on the back end of a tenancy, throughout the whole tenancy, we want to make sure that owners and operators are completely covered. And this is the best attempt at that so far. When it comes to a simplified process, you can think of it as you're going to list your units. You're going to use your normal applicant screening criteria or process. So tenants will actually go into PADmission, which is the ILS I was referring to earlier, and you'll just use your normal application screening process and in template and all of this. You don't have to use anything special that we have or anything. Once you sign that lease, we'll do an inspection. We'll make sure that the unit's ready, and that also you guys are protected on the front end as to the condition of the unit. move in. Hopefully, it's a successful, long-term, stable tenancy. But if there is move out, we take care of all that at the end too. So let's talk about listing your unit. Again, it's a closed system. The public does not have access to it. But then also all the owner operator side of it, nobody sees that but you. All that a tenant is seeing is the property portfolio that you build, listing the amenities, the facilities, all that kind of stuff. We also have, because of Threshold, a full-time admissions specialist. All this person does all day, he even like likes to turn the lights off. He's just like sitting in here in admission, making phone calls, updating units, helping build properties. This is all this person does. He's awesome. And you can see here that last week, you can look at the dates. I did this late last night. We had over 2,000 property searches. So that's a unique search for a user. So we have tons of people in there all day looking for units. And it's also super mobile friendly. So most of our tenants are on their phones doing it, sometimes while you're talking to them, happens. So Padmission is a very innovative software solution, and it's all of it in one place for the whole listing process. I won't get into much more of this, other than you could see kind of the quality of software that you're dealing with, even just looking at the screenshots here, right? You can select which programs you're accepting. You put in your amenities, your facilities, your pet policy, all that stuff. Hopefully, we're helping answer those questions from the tenant, so they're not sending you what's your pet policy and all of that. You can also upload your application and your screening criteria if you want. And then you just have, towards the bottom of the page, you've got your own floor plans, you're listing your rent, you're listing what the fees are and all of that. And then you can also, you can set how often you get emails to update. And so your operator team can just go in there, one click, they can update everything. So it's super easy. You don't have to like remember your password and go through all the things that the rest of us do for all of our social media. When it comes to lease up, this is, I took it out. I have asked quite a few of our operator partners, how laborious is the paperwork? Because that's always like an extra headache that we have, right? Usually it takes 5 to 15 minutes longer than a market tenant, not than a Section 8 voucher tenant, than like the general population that you're dealing with. But the difference is that these tenants also have supportive services. So they also have people who are running over copies of their IDs, forwarding and faxing all the information, so helping out with all of that. The lease-up process, it's one piece of paperwork that verifies your ownership, management, tax ID, all these pieces. And then it's designed to ensure that all parties are fully and fairly covered. So again, regardless of if you're working with 1 in 10, Phoenix Rescue Mission, UMOM, an ABC clinic, it's going to be the same process, which is really cool. Move-in costs are paid by the program. Again, you get that incentive payment right when they move in. And then the supportive services will then help that person stabilize, help them move in, often out of the shelter or off the streets, and then navigate their local grocery store, the closest bus stop, all of that. During the tenancy, we always talk about the supportive services that the tenant receives, but now we have a 6-person full-time team that is just helping you all operate profitable and well-maintained properties. So again, we have a 24-hour hotline. It's a single number. Doesn't matter what you need. You can just call it. And before Threshold, we had like 1.5 people that would do this, and it was actually kind of like funded out of Home Inc., and we didn't even pass those fees along. And so now we have, like I said, 6 awesome full-time support specialists. They have a ton of experience as owners and operators. Some of them still are owners and operators. And then we have a full system designed to help be proactive 100 days out, 90 days out on lease renewals and any sort of other upcoming events. At move out, again, we got those risk mitigation fees. The tenants themselves have supportive services to help with that process. We're often able to mitigate the eviction or help expedite the process of moving out, but then also expedite releasing that same unit so you don't have much downtime. And if you did anyways, we would pay for for that with vacancy loss. Threshold also offers dependable funding. All the vouchers that are coming in to be used through Threshold are permanently funded. Well, I'm going to start with Threshold itself first, obviously. Threshold itself is a permanently funded resource. We initially got the contract to do 3 years up front using ARPA funds through the county. And then the next 2 years were going to be general funds. But at our press launch, June 1st this year, Bill Gates, chairman of the board of the supervisors for Maricopa County, said that this is an indefinitely funded program. So this is now a permanent resource in our community. So you're kind of like part of like the kickoff. Like we're trying really hard to get the name out there and everything. In 5 years, Threshold's going to be here, and it's going to be, the thing that we're all working to build it towards. So it's $5 million for the first 5 years. I'll show you how much we've paid out in incentives and damage claims in a second here, but yeah, this is a new permanent resource for us. The vouchers, like I was saying, they're permanently funded through HUD or through Access, so you don't have to worry about them going anywhere. And then when it comes to dependable funding, for 28 years now, Home Inc. has been paying all of its rental assistance via ACH, direct deposit the night before the 1st of every month. This month we did, well, I won't speak to this month. I didn't run it for the last month, but 2 months ago, I think we did just over $6 million. We're averaging $4.1 million and substantial amount of money. Let me tell you, month end at Home Inc. is like crazy. And it is like, we have to make sure all of our I's are dotted, T's are crossed. We want to make sure everything is perfect. By far, the biggest problem that we have in making payments is that somebody won't get back to us with like some basic documentation. And it's, we have one that's outstanding right now for $50,000. And I'm like, just give me the tax ID, please. We want to pay you. So I know what you're thinking. Too good to be true. We've spent $987,000 in incentives since we've started. So first of all, we met our spending goal. Yes. Also, we've been able to support 500 households exactly. Most of it being rapid rehousing, actually, to help get people access into those homes. And you can see the breakdown. And by the way, this is all publicly available information. We want to make sure that we're held accountable and that we're actually performing like we say we are. You can go to thresholdaz.com and you can click on dashboards. There are 4 dashboards there that will show you how we're spending the money, how many new owners and operators are there, how many new properties. Last month, our total number so far is 265 new owners and operators participating in the homeless voucher system, which is awesome. Almost 600 properties that have never participated with us before. And you can see how many households have received or how many leases have been incentivized due to reduced rent, a new partner, or actually reducing that screening criteria. Most of them are multiple factors of this, but this is the sole reason that the incentive was used, like the main thing that was overcome. So you could see, yeah, it's making big waves. So our ask usually is, hey, join Threshold, schedule something with us. The whole point of this roundtable is to be a little bit more collaborative than that. As a community and as specific leaders, you guys make a lot of decisions that, and the work you do impact a lot of people directly, especially when we're talking about the limited affordable housing supply we have. I'm going to be maybe audacious enough to say we should decide as a community how we're going to go about quickly leasing up these 15% units that we're setting aside. How do we want to prioritize them? And then how are we going to hold ourselves accountable? That would be more internally. I don't actually want to hold anybody accountable. We're just here to make sure you're successful. But we want to offer that, we're able to expedite the lease up for all those 15%. The biggest thing that we're noticing, we have a luxury developer on our advisory council. And the main point that this person's brought up is, how do I communicate the fact that this is such an asset to the person I'm selling to as I'm developing, as I'm leasing up? And we have a lot of tools for that. We've got like this really cool animation and different messaging pieces. But really that just goes to show that like we're actually able to make substantial gains and offer a real value add for developers specifically. But there's also that point of like owners communicating to the operators, hey, I've set this goal. We're participating in the community effort to end homelessness. We're going to get incentives. We're going to get rental assistance paid on time. And then Threshold's going to work hard to mitigate any risk at the end of the tenancy. And then you're going to get the questions like Jessica was referring to, what about like rapid rehousing when they're not successful? That's what Threshold's for, right? So I just want to challenge all of us to set targets. And then like, let's start talking about how we're going to work towards those. Obviously, we can schedule one-on-one meetings, any of that stuff. But yeah, I just thought this would be a really unique opportunity to have that conversation together. So we're also having an operator onboarding in November to follow this. So whatever goals you guys set, that communication piece to your operators, bringing them in, we'll do the full onboarding, like how to register for pad mission, how to, how we cut checks, all those different pieces for the operators in November. And it might be November 19th, maybe. We're still waiting on confirmation, but we'll get that out to you guys as soon as possible. So, all right, just want to open up for questions. This is obviously a really exciting time to, somebody want to talk?
Yeah, this is David Wall. I'm a developer in Tucson. Sounds very Maricopa specific. Is it statewide, or am I just listening to something that is very interesting but not terribly relevant to my business?
I'm glad you found it interesting. And yes, the brand Threshold is specific to Maricopa County, but Home Inc. is the administrator of the service and also the administrator of the vouchers throughout the whole state for the Arizona Access Housing Plan. Arizona Housing Plan? AHP. I just always call it AHP and then I get confused. So yes, we actually have a lot of vouchers down in Tucson, mostly the PSH vouchers, but also we have rapid rehousing, some veteran vouchers as well, I think. So Mike, you want to? No. So yeah, the incentives, the damage claims, it's the exact same amounts and the exact same process. And then we also have that same internet-based listing service, pad mission, down in Tucson.
Okay.
And our goal, not to put Jason on the spot, is to pursue funders as we need to, but obviously we think with access now funding, the incentives, Maricopa County taking care of Maricopa County, there is an opportunity, whether it's through ADOH and the cities or the counties, to continue to add to the pot to make sure it can be scaled and to support all of the COCs. There's 3 states. So and Maricopa County is right now getting approval from supervisors for us to go ahead and use Threshold as the brand statewide and not to have a distinction. They were the sole funder, we need to make sure that they're good with that. And so that ask has been made, and I appreciate your back.
Yep.
And so I'm curious there, not to
Well, real quick, David, did that answer your question? Could you hear all of that?
I could hear most of it. So I guess the question is, what's the process for us down here in the hinterlands to get involved?
Yeah. So you can also just visit thresholdaz.com and click join the network. You can fill out that form, and then our friend over here, Nate, will give you a call probably tomorrow. Or you can always just email me, daniel@homeinc.com, if you have any sort of questions.
Okay.
You would use the same hotline even, because it's going to go to the exact. But we do have an office down in Tucson to specifically serve and support those tenants.
Oh, okay.
So it's not just Maricopa County based. Yeah. And right now we're working on what we're going to do for Northern Arizona. So far, it's just our chief program officer touring the entire state. over and over and over again and housing people and then solving problems and paying rent. So we'll have something soon for that too. But the exact same process, the same amounts, and the same hotline number. Sorry, Jason.
No. And I think like an important caveat in there too is all of these that apply to Maricopa don't apply in the Tucson area, right? So it's a smaller percentage of voucher holders that are in home covered units.
Yep.
But so I'm curious, and I think I'm certainly hopeful that every municipality buys into paying its portion of making this statewide. But I am, of course, thinking the same kind of approach to Maricopa County, so that's not to pass over, but is it the best use of resources and likelihood of achieving something that is systematic if it is every municipality or every county coming in versus is there state appetite and potential resources to supporting this type of work at a statewide level that does ensure that the jurisdiction you live in and the funding that it allocates isn't what determines your ability to rent, right? That kind of create these competitive weird markets across vouchers.
If I could just obviously not speak for ADOH, but when I was a UMOM, running 13 separate grants for rapid rehousing, you have all the different funding limitations that you end up having to that can dictate what the provider's doing. So the way that I've seen Threshold work, even starting to go statewide with the AHP, has been we just present one face. And then on the back end, like Threshold takes care of like all the different, like who we bill to. So if it's an AHP client statewide, we're billing to Access. Outside of that, we would probably look at the COC, right? But like we can handle all that in the back end, like who we're sending invoices to. I don't just mean like logistically, but I mean like us as like the funders and leaders and members, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think so I can appreciate that from that, like how do you put out a standard business? It might be good practice of hoping to say, well, we're going to do it if it's consistent, it's this way, right? But I guess when I think like to the benefit to the person who has a voucher, it's about it not being competitive against another system. And I think we've seen that through the introduction of incentives that weren't coordinated. So you'd have PHAs doing an incentive program that looks very different than consumer care. And so then it makes sense to sort of shop for the best incentive, right? And so I'm curious about opportunities to think about that funding at the state level that ensure that folks, regardless of kind of the priorities of the jurisdiction, have access to those same resources, right? Because you can deliver the same in bill, but what the city of Tucson might buy is not the same as what Maricopa County might procure, what City of Scottsdale, what City of Flagstaff, right?
Yep.
And so creating that sort of, it seems like one of the great values, I guess I'm rambling here. One of the great values of Threshold to me is that it is consistent and like creates a fair playing field for all voucher holders and how to scale to the state level without losing that.
Yep. Yes.
Ruby?
We will take it into consideration. Tom's on the line too, but I'm hunting to Tom through the virtual environment. But as you know, we're a conduit of funding, right? And we receive support from you all, advocacy support from all of you, making recommendations on funding that should come to the Department of Housing and how it goes out into the community. So that ask, I push back on you all to do that, to say, this is a resource that ADOH can benefit from. And we think, by all these proven statistics that this will work really well and programming should be done at that level. That helps us then say, yeah, we can show it with the data when we pull our LIHTC data. That's our job, but we need your advocacy to do that, to accomplish that. Yeah, more state housing trust fund.
Thank you.
You guys, the Arizona Landlord Incentive Program, which was like, it was an early version of this.
Yes.
It was an effort to go statewide and just, and so that just recently, I think David said, I guess kind of quietly closed it down. And so I don't know what was going into that program annually, budget-wise.
I don't know the number off the top of my head. It's just that I think the way the program was set up, it wasn't operating as efficiently and effectively as we wanted it to be.
Right.
And so we were like, where's the most value in our resources? And so if we can prove that up, something like that works effectively, then sure, the money will go there. But that particular program was set up prior to me joining the agency. It's been there for a while. We just weren't seeing the return on that investment. the way we needed it to be.
I would say also, like I was highlighting earlier, that survey, it really matters more so than what providers, like more than what all of us are thinking might work, to hear directly from you all, like what are the dollar and cents solutions that you need? And then how would we systematize that? And then let Mike just go around with his suit on and just pitch it and just secure funding, right? And we'll just do what you tell us to do in a way, right? And if you want to be part of that ongoing learning and adaptation for Threshold, we do have an advisory council that you guys can join if you're interested. I would really suggest that you try it out first for a little while, and then bring your criticisms afterwards. But we do have ongoing meetings with AMA leadership, specifically a lot of developers, operators. What do you need? And then we make those tools. So, yeah.
If I may ask, I'm not that involved in that side of the AMA, even though I'm the past chair. So you've come and talked to us several times, Mike. How is that going? The non-affordable housing matters.
It's a game changer to have Courtney, right, stand up, and Sarah, and say to the members, this works. They really listen to us and our members. They have your interests at heart. They're kind of threading the needle. They are a provider of services, but they're also a member of the AMA. Have been since the 90s. They're a broker, licensed with DB. They speak our language, so the AMA support in reaching their members has been instrumental. Danny recently onboarded. Is it ACM?
AMC.
How many properties?
73 properties. Because I presented at the annual board retreat in August. I was down in Tucson, David, saying hi.
I wasn't there.
I know.
Yeah.
I was there. But that was really great to be able to answer all the technical questions kind of in like a closed-ish room space where like fair housing came up and Mark was there from Zona Law to go just to answer it very blatantly. What about, there's just a lot of different benefits also when you're the AMA coming in the Threshold of like this unified support, but then also, we're getting a lot of attention. And so we're definitely passing on any of the good news to people who are, help make the, what'd you call it, Jessica? The good, be good on top of good, right? Situation. So, and then also we're onboarding asset living, Lewis, if you're out there, hi, on Wednesday. So their full portfolio, and that came directly from the board presentation. Then we were at the trade show, right? And I ran into him, had to take my wig off and the full costume that we had on, right? But so that's exactly how we're hoping to roll it out first, is starting top down. Yep. Sorry.
And AMA has not been the most popular group in town the last 3 years, and so typically there's an opportunity to get some good press and to help their members do the right thing.
Wait, people who raise your rents are not popular,
Right. So, but shamelessly, like let's celebrate it and recognize that Sarah and Jake said in the very first meeting we had, they said we're housing providers. What we thought, I think we're the housing providers, and so there's an opportunity.
Did you have your hand up?
I do have a quick question.
Yeah.
Just on the dollar side, what would the benefit range look like for you of how much money you could get through the program?
Well, that was like a bump set spike. Like, thanks for setting me up. I appreciate that. We actually do have a brochure over here that compares a market rate tenant to a threshold supported tenant using $1,200 as a general rent, which at the time of printing was a relevant rental amount. But it ends up being the 1.5 on the front end is cash payment, right? And then you got 3 months rent on the back end for damage claim, and then an additional 1 for vacancy loss. So for a 12-month lease, you've got 5.5 months worth of incentive or risk mitigation funds. Not to mention a lot of the other value adds that our partners have identified, things like our average inspection time is about 2 days from the time of request till it passes, right? Often we're doing it the same day or the next day. And so prorated. I don't know what you're charging for rent now, but 2 days compared to however long it would take to get that signed, that's a pretty substantial incentive as well. So there's a lot of other operational benefits that I just cut out of the presentation because it's just getting too long. Really, so this is like a really good feeling conversation, obviously, for us as Threshold. What do you like? Is this appealing? Not only like is this appealing, but like what's your natural reaction to this? What are your questions? And then we'll jump into homing to learn about the voucher administration, some of that stuff.
I know work. Schedule. Sign on. Service. They're going to be responsive to us and help us to quickly. This week had some challenge.
Yep.
So Daniel, Mike, I mean, again, I missed the board meeting for the AMA this summer. Issue going on. So let me follow up with Courtney and Jake and our team, Sarah, and kind of see how it's going, right? Because I think the affordable housing audience is there.
Right.
That's a friendly, let's all kind of hold hands and say, how do you do more of this? It's the market rate audience that has been super skeptical. And a lot of what you were addressing, Daniel, is what needs to be addressed. You get a resident there, it doesn't go well, whatever reason. And now I got an issue that I didn't have to have, right? This is the Snidely Whiplash owner, this is that owner that says, I didn't really need to have that kind of a problem. And I think you're addressing all of it. I mean, to have a resource you can go to and really deal in the exit protection, or whatever you call it, Daniel, the 3 months of, wow, if something really went bad, there's money to help deal, not to sound so callous, but there's money to deal with that.
Yeah.
I think that really gets people's attention. So I'd say, Mike, why don't you and I follow up? We'll talk again to Courtney. You were there in August. You've got some results already from large management companies. It's really a management company. Well, I wouldn't say it quite that way. It's both an owner and a management company. And let's just talk some more about that. I mean, that would be the high impact, right? We represent 350,000 units in the state of Arizona.
Yep.
That's our industry. That would really be the
historically, when we started operating vouchers in '94, we were on a lot of AMA member properties because the rents were relatively affordable.
Sure.
They fit within the fair market rents. There was 9 to 12% vacancy. So we didn't have to beg too much, right? Like they understood the business model of accepting voucher programs, and it's just not that way anymore. So this is an effort to get back onto that segment of the market because we've done a good job in the last few years of targeting moms and pops, garden style apartments, the folks who were listing on regular MLS, single family homes, those types of things. But we have largely fell off some of the conventional market rate of properties. Right. As Daniel mentioned, when HUD published their fair market rents for October 1st in Maricopa County, and one bedroom was up around 15 something now. Suddenly we just got back into the market. But if somebody's a little leery about it, it's still a voucher program, it's the voucher can afford your rents down and you have all these additional incentives. Like we need you to.
Well, and my occupancies are higher than my budget said I was going to do, right? I mean, so you don't, in most of the market, at least that's what I hear from most of the market rate owners, they are full, you all know this, and rents are going up at a pace that's not continuing forever.
Got my first quarterly data from Real Data, and it was negative, right? Quarter to quarter, and it's so.
But the key is you've created something that's much more owner manager friendly, right? And a group that can be talked to. So I'd say let's keep exploring that.
I was just going to say, as it relates to the 15%, for a new project coming along, and they hit those points, they make that commitment. I think we just make sure that everyone understands that we stand. There's a piece of the QAP that says upon certificate of occupancy that the developer will notify the local housing authority.
Right.
And so similarly, we want to be notified as well for our vouchers and these incentives come along. So those are the projects that will come play in like 2025, is that right?
There's no resistance from the developer. You know, if you opt into that as a
Yeah.
developer, you're not going to be resistant to working with.
Oh, no, and there's paths, right? So let's make that clear, because I don't want anybody to walk away thinking the QAP only has one vehicle
Right.
to achieve that. We're
Right.
just introducing you to an
Right.
option on that path to facilitate that,
Yep.
right? So, and we'll talk about that in our QAP application workshop. This is one way to get there. And it's such a great way to get there, right? Because they're doing everything for you. So we just wanted to present that information. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to just respond to Steve's comment or concern about kind of your management companies. They're gonna resist.
Well, it's new, they have to learn something new. But I think that the operator seminar that they're gonna hold in November will be helpful because they're gonna have management people up there and they can talk from real experience and that kind of, that's it, you can't.
That's what you want to hear from. The developer side, again, I don't know the challenges. I'm just not there.
I only see upside.
Well, for the most part, like you said, on the corporate side, where there's typically you guys have been in participating buying their own, but still, there's hesitancy by leasing specialists, leasing managers about, is this process going to be some difficult, time consuming?
10 more minutes.
Yeah.
10 more minutes. I mean, sorry, Mike.
No.
But it could help them in the long run, like by filling the units and making it easier. So those 10 minutes of spending on the phone with specialists would save them an hour in the long run by helping them with all these other things.
And Jessica said there's more revenue. I made a
Yeah.
note. Jessica said there's more revenue.
Yeah, it'll help them meet their goals. And at the end of the day, we're the owner, and this is what we want to happen with the property. And so we just have to communicate that clearly and, hold their hand through any fear.
Because by the way, when I'm presenting to them, that's actually what they say is, this is awesome. How do I tell my owners about this? I'm like, well, I talked to
The
them
owner said-
and they said, go talk to the operators.
Maybe
Talk to the
in
owners.
same
They said,
room,
well, the
maybe-
developers.
Maybe in the same room at the same time.
Exactly.
The owner and the operator, which, that goes out.
It's a great program, it's a great organization. Happy to share it.
I don't think, as far as any home slides that are necessary, I would just say, we got a great opportunity to meet with Jody Sheehan, how she's launched. And, just kind of bring her up to speed on what she found, interesting and new, she wasn't aware, a certain thing, right, so just, if you don't know, Homey is a real estate company. Around since then. You have some experience in Florida. Property man. Do not currently do exclusively operate scattered site and now project-based that-based rental out since 1990. But we've scaled quite a bit in the last few years. It used to be exclusively Arizona Behavioral Health Corporation operating continuum of care funded vouchers, vouchers through the COC for homeless. We've expanded to start serving, pretty much any HUD-funded care, grantee, bridges, save the family. And then again, as Daniel mentioned, just celebrated on October 1st, access housing. There's that brought on housing vouchers, subsidies, and so we're now at about 5,000 vouchers. That's the thing, it's just Arizona, centralized organization administering the voucher assistance, all of those special populations. Picture in most other community housing board. Section 8. We got about 9 or 10 different homeless services organizations who are all operating vouchers. That same community. There's a property management company. By all those agencies asking for participation and flashing different incentives and essentially, so not only has Threshold tried to take that and say, let's build incentive and liaison package that is consistent for everyone. Voucher side, administration, whether it's inspections, et cetera, that is also virtually everything in Maricopa County that's not a Section 8 ballot. Tucson, it is simply the access house. That's where we're up to 70 employees, again, office on Phoenix, we're gonna have folks in. So, profit, mission-driven organization, future language business model, also understands the severe housing. So, let's get out here, traffic control in the middle. So, that's all the homing slides say, and you guys all know this a little bit, but remembered us as a little 12-person street. Throw it up a little bit. That's it from me. Thank you guys so much for coming. ADOH for meeting and hosting and letting this get moved out. Really.
Thank you all so much for your time. I know you guys are extremely busy. Some of you even did slides while you were on vacation with your 4 kids at a ridiculous, that's ridiculous.
Some of us
Thank you.
drove from Tucson. How about that?
Thank you.
Jessica, thank you so much for really.
Thank you.
for
No,
this.
thanks,
And thanks ADOH for hosting this. Everybody have a great afternoon.
Great.
I've got, whatever, but you can find out all this information, thresholdinc.com. Join the network there. You can look at slides, the finances, all that stuff. So thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, power mama.